Lisa Kane stood at the big window of Earth Defense Station Alpha. She watched the sun rise over the blue Pacific Ocean. The golden light made the water look like liquid fire. At 34 years old, Lisa had spent her whole life protecting Earth. She was one of the best commanders in the human space fleet. Her husband Jake worked in the science labs below. He studied alien plants and animals from distant worlds. Their daughter Emma was 8 years old and went to school on the station. Emma wanted to be a starship captain just like her mother. The family was happy together on the space station, high above Earth. The morning was peaceful until loud alarms started screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere. Lisa ran to her command center. The main screen showed something terrible. Huge alien ships were dropping out of space around Earth. Each ship was as big as a city. They appeared in perfect formation without any warning. "Commander Kane to the bridge," someone shouted over the intercom. Lisa's heart pounded as she ran through the corridors. She had trained for this moment her whole life, but nothing could prepare her for what she saw. The alien ships were beautiful and terrifying. They looked like giant crystals made of dark metal. Energy shields glowed around them in purple light. These were hegemony ships. Humanity had heard stories about the hegemony from other alien races. They conquered worlds across the galaxy. No one had ever defeated them. "All stations, prepare for battle," Lisa ordered into her communicator. But deep down, she knew they were in trouble. Earth's defenses were strong, but these alien ships were like nothing humans had ever seen. The first attack came without warning. Bright beams of energy shot from the hegemony ships. They cut through Earth's orbital defenses like a hot knife through butter. The USS Liberty, humanity's greatest warship, exploded in a ball of fire. Admiral Peterson's voice crackled over the radio. "All stations, this is command. We cannot. God help us all." Lisa watched in horror as Earth's protection fell apart. Space stations exploded one by one. Defensive satellites turned into clouds of metal debris. The alien weapons were too powerful. Human shields and armor meant nothing against them. The hegemony attack was cold and efficient. They hit military bases first. Then they targeted power plants and communication centers. Finally, they turned their weapons on the cities where people lived. Lisa saw Sydney disappear under a column of fire. New York's tall buildings crumbled to dust. The European command center went silent forever. Station Alpha shook as enemy fire hit it. The lights flickered and went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. Walls cracked and air rushed out through holes in the hull. Lisa heard people screaming and running through the corridors. She had to find her family. Lisa ran through smoke-filled hallways toward the science section. Pieces of metal fell from the ceiling. Sparks shot from broken electrical systems. The station was dying around her. Jake's laboratory was destroyed. Computer screens were shattered. Research equipment lay broken on the floor. Lisa found her husband under a fallen beam. His hand reached toward a data tablet that contained all his work on alien life. But Jake was not breathing anymore. His kind eyes were closed forever. Lisa's heart broke, but she had to keep moving. Emma's school was in another section of the station. She ran as fast as she could, dodging falling debris and fires that burned in the walls. But when she reached the school section, there was nothing there. A direct hit from the alien weapons had completely destroyed it. Lisa stared out through a broken window at the space where her daughter's classroom used to be. Nothing was left but floating pieces of metal and glass. Emma's drawings were gone. Her laughter was gone. Her dreams of being a starship captain were gone forever. The station shook again as more alien weapons hit it. Lisa forced herself to move. She made it to the escape pod bay where 17 other survivors waited. They climbed into the small ship and launched into space just as Station Alpha exploded behind them. From the escape pod, Lisa watched Earth burn. The beautiful blue planet that had been humanity's home for thousands of years was covered in red, fire, and black smoke. Cities that had stood for centuries were gone. Billions of people were dead. Everything humans had built was destroyed. The hegemony ships moved in perfect formation around the dying planet. They broadcasted a message to any human survivors. Your species will surrender completely. You will become servants of the hegemony empire. You will work for us until you die. This is the fate of all conquered worlds. The aliens explained that they had done this to 47 other species across the galaxy. Every one of those races had tried to fight back. Everyone had failed. The hegemony was too strong, too advanced, too organized to defeat. But they had never met humans before. As Lisa floated in the escape pod watching her world die, something hard and cold formed in her heart. The grief threatened to destroy her mind, but she pushed it down deep inside. Her family was gone. Her home was gone. Everything she had ever loved was gone. The other survivors in the pod were crying and praying. Some of them talked about surrendering to the aliens. They said there was no hope left. The hegemony was too powerful. Resistance was impossible. Lisa looked at their faces and made a decision. She would not surrender. She would not become a slave. She would make the aliens pay for what they had done. Somehow, someway, she would find a way to fight back. The hegemony thought they knew everything about war. They thought they could predict how humans would react to defeat. They had conquered 47 worlds using the same tactics. But they had never faced a species like humanity before. They had never faced a mother who lost her child. They had never faced a woman who lost everything and chose to keep fighting anyway. They had never faced the fury of a human being who had nothing left to lose. Lisa Kane would make them learn. 6 months after the world ended, Lisa Kane crawled out of a hole in the ground outside Denver. The city was a pile of broken concrete and twisted metal. Smoke still rose from some of the ruins. The sky was gray with ash and dust. This was what Earth looked like now. Lisa had changed. She was thinner and harder than before. Her hair was cut short and dirty. Scars marked her face and hands. She wore pieces of armor taken from dead alien soldiers. The weapons she carried were also stolen from the enemy. Her blue eyes, once warm and kind, now burned with cold fire. She was not alone. 16 people had survived with her in the underground, bunkers beneath Denver. They called themselves the Mountain Resistance. Every day they went out to find food, weapons, and other survivors. Every night, they hid from alien patrol ships that hunted them like animals. The hegemony ruled Earth. Now, their sleek ships flew through the poisoned sky. Alien soldiers walked through the dead cities looking for humans to capture. They had built processing centers where they sorted survivors like cattle. Some humans were sent to work camps. Others were shipped off-world to serve as slaves on distant planets. But not all humans had given up. Small groups of fighters hid in ruins and caves across the planet. They struck at alien patrols when they could. They saved other survivors when possible. They refused to surrender even though the situation seemed hopeless. Lisa made contact with these other groups. She used old military radio equipment to talk to survivors across the continent. Colonel Ben Martinez led fighters in the Rocky Mountains. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had scientists hiding in the tunnels under Chicago. Captain Roy Jackson commanded a few hidden ships in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Each group fought alone. They won small victories against enemy patrols. They rescued handfuls of human prisoners. But these tiny successes barely hurt the hegemony at all. The aliens were too strong and too many. Scattered resistance would never be enough to free Earth. Lisa realized that separate groups could not win. The various resistance cells needed to work together, but traveling between them was dangerous. Hegemony sensors could detect human movement across long distances. Their patrol ships shot at anything that moved in the wasteland. She decided to take the risk anyway. Lisa began making dangerous trips across the ruined landscape. She crawled through burned forests and dead cities. She hid from alien patrols and avoided the processing centers. Slowly, she built connections between the scattered resistance groups. Her reputation grew among the survivors. Here was someone who had lost everything but kept fighting. She could look at impossible situations and find ways to win. When other people saw alien technology and felt hopeless, Lisa saw weaknesses to exploit. The resistance leaders met in secret in the ruins of St. Louis. They gathered in the basement of a destroyed library. 23 men and women sat around, a table made from broken concrete blocks. These were the people keeping humanity alive. Lisa stood before them and spoke in a quiet, steady voice. The aliens think they know us because they conquered 47 other species. Every one of those species fought the way the hegemony expected them to fight. They used conventional military tactics. They followed the normal rules of war. That is why they all lost. She walked around the table, looking each person in the eyes. We are not going to make that mistake. We are not going to fight fair. We are not going to follow their rules. We are going to fight like humans, not like the aliens expect us to fight. Lisa had spent months studying captured hegemony equipment. She learned how their weapons worked and how their communication systems operated. The alien technology was very advanced, but it was also standardized across their entire empire. Every weapon was the same. Every ship used the same systems. This made them efficient, but it also made them predictable. They rely on superior firepower to crush resistance quickly, Lisa explained. They have never faced a species willing to fight dirty. They have never fought people who refuse to give up no matter what happens. They have never encountered human creativity and stubbornness. Under Lisa's leadership, the resistance began to change. They stopped trying to match alien technology. Instead, they focused on human advantages. Humans were adaptable. They could learn quickly and change tactics when needed. They were willing to take risks that would seem crazy to more logical species. Most importantly, humans knew Earth better than the aliens did. Every forest, every mountain, every river could become a weapon against the invaders. The resistance learned to use familiar terrain as a deadly trap. They set up ambushes in places the aliens thought were safe. They used weather patterns to hide their movements. When sandstorms hit the desert regions, human fighters appeared out of the dust to attack enemy convoys. When blizzards covered the northern mountains, resistance fighters struck at isolated outposts before vanishing into the snow. The aliens began to notice when entire patrol groups started disappearing. Transport convoys failed to reach their destinations. Communication stations went silent without explanation. For the first time in centuries, the hegemony's perfect conquest schedule faced delays. Dr. Rodriguez worked with Lisa to understand how the aliens communicated with each other. The hegemony used quantum networks that connected their forces across the galaxy instantly. These networks were secure, but they followed predictable patterns that clever humans could learn to exploit. They have conquered so many worlds that they have become like a big government office, Rodriguez explained to the resistance leaders. Everything follows standard procedures. They file reports on schedule. They follow the same routines every day. We can use this against them. Lisa approved increasingly bold operations. Human fighters learned to disguise themselves using stolen alien equipment. They snuck into hegemony communication centers and fed false information into the quantum networks. Patrol schedules were changed. Supply convoys were sent to the wrong locations where ambushes waited. Commanders received contradictory orders that created confusion in their ranks. The resistance grew stronger with each success. More survivors joined the fight. Weapons and equipment were captured from the enemy. Most importantly, humans began to believe that victory might be possible after all. Captain Jackson's hidden fleet started attacking hegemony supply lines in deep space. His ships used hit-and-run tactics that the aliens could not predict. They would appear suddenly, strike hard, and disappear before enemy reinforcements could arrive. Lisa herself led ground operations that took advantage of Earth's extreme weather. Alien environmental suits were designed for standard planetary conditions. They worked poorly in Earth's blizzards, hurricanes, and heat waves. Hegemony soldiers found themselves caught in natural disasters that seemed to come from nowhere. The resistance learned to use human emotions as weapons. While the HFY hegemony valued logic and efficiency, humans fought with passion and creativity. This made them unpredictable in ways that consistently surprised the alien forces. News of Earth's continued resistance began to reach other conquered worlds through the hegemony's own communication networks. For the first time in centuries, enslaved, alien species began to wonder if the Empire might not be unbeatable after all. Lisa stood in her new command center, hidden deep in a cave system beneath the Colorado mountains. Maps covered the walls showing resistance operations across the planet. Radio equipment crackled with reports from fighters around the globe. For the first time since Earth fell, she allowed herself to smile. The war was far from over, but humanity was no longer just surviving. They were learning, adapting, and fighting back. The hegemony was about to discover what happened when they tried to break the wrong species. 2 years after Earth fell, Lisa Kane stood in a hidden base built into the Appalachian Mountains. The caves had been expanded into a complex network of tunnels and rooms. Hundreds of resistance fighters lived and worked here. This was no longer just a group of desperate survivors. It had become something much more dangerous. Lisa walked through the main command center. Computer screens showed operations happening across the planet. Radio operators talked to resistance cells in Africa, Asia, and South America. Engineers worked on captured alien technology. Scientists studied enemy weapons and communication systems. The resistance had transformed into a real military force. Dr. Amy Rodriguez ran the technology division. Her team of brilliant scientists worked day and night to understand how hegemony equipment functioned. They could not build weapons as advanced as the aliens, but they could learn the principles behind them. More importantly, they could find ways to turn alien technology against its creators. "We have made a breakthrough," Rodriguez told Lisa as they walked through the engineering section. "The hegemony communication networks are quantum encrypted and span their entire empire. Messages travel instantly across the galaxy. But we have found a weakness." She led Lisa to a bank of computer screens showing complex data patterns. The networks are secure, but they follow standardized protocols. Everything is organized according to strict procedures. Every message has the same format. Every station follows the same schedule. After studying thousands of intercepted transmissions, we can predict their patterns. Lisa studied the information carefully. "What does this mean for our operations?" "It means we can fool their networks," Rodriguez explained with excitement. "We can make their own communication systems work for us instead of against us. We can send false orders to their troops. We can redirect their supply convoys into our ambushes. We can create confusion throughout their command structure." This was exactly the kind of advantage Lisa had been hoping for. The resistance could never match hegemony firepower, but they could be smarter and more creative. They could use the aliens' own strengths against them. Lisa approved a series of increasingly bold operations. Resistance fighters disguised as hegemony technicians infiltrated communication stations across the planet. They planted devices that let humans access the alien networks. Suddenly, enemy patrol schedules were being changed by fake orders. Supply convoys found themselves sent to locations where resistance ambushes waited. The confusion spread through hegemony ranks like a disease. Commanders received contradictory instructions from their superiors. Units were ordered to abandon their posts or attack their own allies. The aliens' efficient command structure began to break down as false information corrupted their decision-making process. The hegemony responded by sending more forces to Earth. Additional ships arrived from other star systems. Fresh troops were deployed to garrison duty. Security protocols were tightened around all communication facilities. But this played right into Lisa's strategy. Every new alien unit sent to Earth was a unit not available for other conquests. For the first time in centuries, the hegemony's expansion program faced serious delays. Resources that should have been used to attack new worlds were being tied up, trying to pacify one stubborn planet. Captain Roy Jackson's hidden fleet had grown to include 30 ships operating in deep space. They attacked hegemony supply lines, using guerrilla tactics that the aliens found impossible to counter. The attacks followed no pattern that enemy analysts could predict. Jackson's ships would strike seemingly random targets with devastating effectiveness before vanishing into the asteroid belt. Lisa began coordinating ground operations with space attacks. When Jackson hit a supply convoy in orbit, resistance fighters on the ground would simultaneously attack the facilities where those supplies were supposed to be delivered. The combined operations created a multiplier effect that made each attack more damaging than it would have been alone. The resistance learned to exploit human advantages that the aliens could not understand. Hegemony's strategy was based on logic and efficiency. Their computer models could predict how rational opponents would behave. But humans did not always act rationally when they were angry or desperate. Lisa used this psychological difference to her advantage. Resistance operations were designed to be unpredictable and emotionally driven. When the aliens expected humans to retreat, they attacked instead. When enemy forces prepared for frontal assaults, resistance fighters struck from unexpected directions, using unconventional tactics. Earth's geography became a weapon system. Lisa's forces knew every mountain, forest, desert, and swamp on the planet. They understood weather patterns and seasonal changes that the aliens were still learning about. Hegemony troops found themselves caught in blizzards, flash floods, and sandstorms that seemed to arise at the worst possible moments. The alien environmental suits were designed for standard planetary conditions. They worked adequately in controlled environments but failed badly when faced with Earth's extreme weather variations. Resistance fighters learned to time their attacks to coincide with severe weather that would handicap enemy equipment while leaving human fighters relatively unaffected. Dr. Rodriguez made another crucial discovery while analyzing captured hegemony command systems. The aliens' hierarchical structure was extremely rigid. Lower-level commanders had very little authority to make independent decisions. Higher-level commanders were often light years away and could not respond quickly to changing local conditions. Their chain of command is both a strength and a weakness, Rodriguez explained to Lisa. It allows them to coordinate operations across vast distances, but it also makes them slow to adapt when faced with unexpected situations. Lisa saw the opportunity. Immediately, resistance operations began targeting middle-level hegemony commanders who were responsible for day-to-day operations on Earth. When these officers were killed or captured, their subordinates often became paralyzed waiting for orders from distant superiors. The resistance developed new techniques for creating false emergency situations that forced alien commanders to reveal their communication patterns and decision-making processes. Each revealed protocol became intelligence that could be used to exploit weaknesses in future operations. News of human success began reaching other conquered worlds through the hegemony's own communication networks. Alien species that had accepted their fate as permanent slaves started to remember what freedom felt like. Some began organizing their own resistance movements using tactics learned from human broadcasts. Lisa received messages from underground groups on 3 different planets. They asked for advice on fighting the hegemony. For the first time in galactic history, a successful resistance was sharing knowledge with liberation movements on other worlds. The psychological impact was enormous. The hegemony had built their empire on the belief that resistance was futile. For over 1,000 years, every conquered species had eventually accepted defeat. Earth was proving that even the most overwhelming military superiority could be overcome by people who refused to give up. Lisa stood at the observation window of her underground command center, looking out at the night sky. Somewhere up there, among the stars were worlds full of people who had lost hope. But Earth's example was changing that. Human stubbornness and creativity were spreading across the galaxy like a virus that the hegemony could not cure. The war was entering a new phase. The resistance had evolved from desperate survival to organized opposition. They had learned to use alien technology and turn hegemony strengths into vulnerabilities. Most importantly, they had proven that the Empire was not invincible. But the real test was still coming. Intelligence reports suggested that the hegemony high command was losing patience with the situation on Earth. A massive fleet was being assembled to end human resistance once and for all. When that fleet arrived, Lisa and her people would face their ultimate challenge. She was ready for it. 3 years after Earth fell, Lisa Kane had become something unique in galactic history. She could think like the hegemony while keeping human unpredictability. Her resistance network now reached far beyond Earth to other conquered worlds where enslaved species were beginning to hope again. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kevin Sharp was a language expert who had survived the destruction of London's academic centers. He lived in the underground tunnels beneath the ruined city, working with a small group of scholars who studied alien communications. Sharp made contact with underground movements on 3 different hegemony worlds. "Lisa, you need to see this," Sharp said over the encrypted communication link. His excited voice crackled through the static. "We are receiving messages from resistance groups on other planets. They want to know how we are fighting the hegemony so successfully." Lisa studied the translated messages in her command center deep beneath the Colorado mountains. Alien species that had been enslaved for decades were starting to organize their own liberation movements. They were using tactics learned from intercepted human broadcasts. Earth's resistance had become more than a military operation. It was becoming a symbol that other species could rally around. "The hegemony has never faced anything like this," Dr. Rodriguez explained as she analyzed the intelligence data. "Their standard pacification techniques work on most species because conquered races eventually lose hope. But hope is spreading from world to world now. Our example is showing them that the Empire can be defeated." Lisa realized that Earth's resistance had triggered something unprecedented in galactic history. The concept of successful rebellion was spreading like a virus through the hegemony's communication networks. Every species that had accepted defeat was beginning to remember what freedom felt like. She began coordinating with the alien resistance movements through carefully hidden communication channels. Human tactical knowledge was shared with liberation fighters on distant worlds. In return, Earth's resistance received intelligence about hegemony operations and troop movements throughout the galaxy. The key insight came when Lisa studied captured historical records from the hegemony's administrative center in former Berlin. Her forces had raided the facility in a daring night operation that cost 12 human lives, but yielded invaluable intelligence about Empire operations. The records showed that every previous conquest had followed exactly the same pattern. First came the overwhelming initial assault that destroyed military resistance. Then systematic pacification operations eliminated organized opposition. Finally, integration into the Empire turned conquered species into productive slaves. The entire process typically took 2 to 3 years for any given world. Earth should have been pacified 18 months ago, Lisa told her senior commanders. Instead, hegemony forces are facing stronger resistance now than when they first arrived. "We have completely broken their standard timeline. The aliens were being forced to commit more resources to holding Earth than they had ever needed for any previous conquest. Entire fleet groups that should have been attacking new worlds were tied up trying to maintain control over humanity's home planet." Lisa coordinated a galaxy-wide operation called Rising Dawn. Resistance cells on 17 different worlds would launch simultaneous attacks against hegemony infrastructure. The goal was to create chaos across multiple star systems and force the Empire to spread their forces even thinner. The operation required precise timing and coordination across vast interstellar distances. Lisa used the hegemony's own quantum communication networks to synchronize the attacks. False messages disguised as routine administrative traffic carried coded instructions to resistance movements throughout the galaxy. At exactly 00 hours Galactic Standard Time, the attacks began. On Earth, human fighters struck at communication facilities in 12 major cities simultaneously. Captain Jackson's fleet attacked supply convoys in the outer solar system. Dr. Rodriguez's cyber warfare teams flooded hegemony networks with false emergency reports. At the same time, alien resistance movements struck at their own local targets. Enslaved species that had not fought back in decades suddenly erupted in coordinated rebellion. Processing centers were destroyed. Garrison troops faced surprise attacks. Administrative facilities went up in flames. The psychological impact was enormous. For the first time in over 1,000 years, the hegemony faced organized rebellion on a scale their protocols had never anticipated. Their efficient command structure, designed to manage a peaceful empire, struggled to cope with simultaneous crises across 17 different star systems. Lisa watched the results from her command center as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The operation was succeeding beyond her wildest hopes. Hegemony forces were in chaos as they tried to respond to attacks they could not predict or prevent. "Commander, we are receiving a priority transmission from the Hegemony High Command," the communications officer reported. "They are broadcasting on all frequencies." The message appeared on the main screen. A tall, elegant alien in ornate robes spoke in perfectly translated human languages. This was Supreme Commander Valix, ruler of the Hegemony Empire. His species had pale blue skin and large dark eyes that showed no emotion. "Attention, human resistance leaders," Valix said in a calm, measured voice. "Your recent operations have been noted by the High Command. We acknowledge your tactical abilities and offer terms for negotiation. Surrender now, and your species will be granted special status within the Empire. Continue fighting and Earth will be completely sterilized." Lisa looked at the faces of her senior staff. Colonel Martinez clenched his fists. Dr. Rodriguez shook her head in disgust. Captain Jackson's image on the communication screen showed his anger clearly. These were people who had lost everything to the hegemony. Negotiation was not an option. "Send them our response," Lisa ordered. The reply was simple and direct. No. The hegemony's reaction was swift and predictable. Intelligence reports confirmed that a massive fleet was assembling in the Proxima Centauri system. This was not just another garrison force. It was enough firepower to destroy entire worlds. The Empire was finally taking humanity seriously as a threat that needed to be eliminated completely. But Lisa had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. The lessons learned from humanity's first defeat had been applied across an entire network of rebel worlds. Where Earth's original defense had relied on conventional military tactics, the second defense would incorporate everything humans had learned about asymmetric warfare and galactic politics. Dr. Sharp made another crucial discovery while analyzing hegemony command structures. The aliens' decision-making process was extremely centralized. Major strategic decisions could only be made by the High Command on their capital world, which was over 50 light-years from Earth. "This creates a communication delay," Sharp explained. "Even using quantum networks, it takes time for information to travel across the galaxy and for decisions to be made. We can exploit this delay by changing our tactics faster than they can respond." Lisa began planning Earth's second defense. This time, humanity would not face the hegemony alone. Resistance movements on other worlds would coordinate their operations to support Earth's battle. The Empire would face attacks from multiple directions simultaneously, stretching their resources to the breaking point. The galaxy was changing. Species that had accepted their fate as hegemony subjects were remembering what it meant to be free. The age of unquestioned imperial dominance was ending as other civilizations followed humanity's example of successful resistance. Lisa stood at her command center reviewing tactical displays showing the approaching enemy fleet. She had lost everything in the first hegemony attack. Her family was dead. Her home world was scarred and broken. But she had built something from those ashes that the Empire had never faced before. The second strike was coming. This time, humanity would be ready. The network of rebel worlds stood with Earth. Free species across the galaxy were preparing to fight for their liberation. The hegemony was about to learn that sometimes the species you try to break becomes the one that breaks you instead. Lisa smiled grimly as she studied the tactical displays. The real war was about to begin. 4 years after Earth fell, Lisa Kane stood on the bridge of humanity's secret flagship, the UES Retribution. The ship had been built in hidden asteroid facilities using a combination of human engineering and captured hegemony technology. She was no longer just a resistance leader. She had become the architect of the galaxy's first coordinated rebellion against the hegemony in over 1,000 years. The Retribution represented humanity's evolution from desperate survivors to a spacefaring civilization capable of challenging the galaxy's dominant empire. Its weapons combined human creativity with alien technology in ways the hegemony had never seen before. The crew included not just humans, but representatives from 6 other species that had joined the growing rebellion. "Commander, long range. Sensors are detecting the hegemony fleet," reported Lieutenant Dan Cooper from the sensor station. "They are dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Ship count is over 300 vessels." Lisa studied the tactical display. The enemy fleet was massive, larger than any force the hegemony had ever committed to a single world conquest. They had brought enough firepower to turn Earth into molten rock. Supreme Commander Valix was taking no chances this time. Signal all. Resistance units, Lisa ordered calmly. Operation Second Dawn is now in effect. Across the solar system, human forces moved into position. This was not like the first battle 4 years ago. Then, Earth's defenders had tried to meet the aliens in conventional space combat using traditional military tactics. They had been crushed in hours. This time would be different. Captain Roy Jackson commanded the deep space units hiding in the asteroid belt. His 40 ships included captured hegemony vessels that had been modified with human weapons and tactics. They would not engage the main fleet directly. Instead, they would strike at supply lines and communication ships, using hit-and-run attacks to create confusion. Colonel Ben Martinez led the ground-based defense network. Hidden missile silos and energy weapons were scattered across Earth's surface, disguised to look like ruins from the original conquest. The hegemony expected to find a broken world defended by desperate survivors. They would instead face a planet that had been turned into a massive fortress. Dr. Amy Rodriguez coordinated the cyber warfare operations from her underground command center. 4 years of studying alien technology had given her team unprecedented access to hegemony computer systems. They could turn the enemy's own networks against them. The battle began when the first wave of hegemony ships entered the inner solar system. They moved in perfect formation, just as they had 4 years ago. But this time their sensors detected something impossible. Earth's orbital space was full of defensive platforms, weapon batteries, and shield generators that should not have existed. How did they rebuild so quickly? Supreme Commander Valix demanded from his flagship. The answer came in the form of energy beams that carved through his lead ships like a hot knife through metal. These were not standard human weapons. They were hegemony designs that had been improved and modified by human engineers. Lisa watched from the retribution as the first exchange of fire lit up the space around Earth. Her forces were not trying to win a direct confrontation. They were implementing a strategy based on 4 years of studying hegemony weaknesses. The alien fleet found their communication networks flooded with false data. Dr. Rodriguez's cyber attacks made it impossible for enemy commanders to coordinate effectively. Ships received contradictory orders. Battle formations broke down as units responded to fake emergency signals. Captain Jackson's asteroid fleet struck from multiple directions simultaneously. They appeared suddenly from behind cover, fired their weapons, and disappeared before the hegemony could respond. Each attack targeted critical systems, communication arrays, sensor platforms, and command ships. The hegemony tried to adapt, but their rigid command structure worked against them. Lower-level officers lacked authority to change tactics quickly. Higher-level commanders were too far away to understand the local situation. The aliens' greatest strength became their greatest weakness. Lisa ordered the Retribution into close combat with a group of enemy cruisers. The human flagship moved with an unpredictability that confused alien targeting systems. Its weapons fired in patterns that made no logical sense, but somehow achieved devastating results. "Their tactics are completely irrational," complained the hegemony tactical officer aboard Valix's flagship. "Our computer models cannot predict their next move." That was exactly the point. Human creativity and emotional decision-making created a randomness that logical alien minds could not anticipate. Where other species fought according to established military principles, humans made up new rules as they went along. The battle moved to Earth's surface as hegemony ground forces attempted to land. They expected to find scattered groups of poorly armed survivors hiding in ruins. Instead, they encountered a planet-wide defense network that had been 4 years in the making. Colonel Martinez's forces used Earth's geography as a weapon system. Alien landing craft found themselves caught in carefully prepared ambushes. Valleys that looked safe became killing zones filled with hidden weapon emplacements. Mountain passes turned into traps that destroyed entire enemy columns. Weather became another weapon. Dr. Rodriguez had learned to predict Earth's atmospheric patterns and time military operations to coincide with severe storms. Hegemony troops found themselves fighting in hurricanes, blizzards, and dust storms that their equipment was not designed to handle. The psychological impact was devastating. For over 1,000 years, The hegemony had never faced serious resistance from a conquered world. Their soldiers were trained to fight brief campaigns against demoralized enemies. They were not prepared for the intensity of human determination. News of the battle spread across the galaxy through communication networks that resistance movements had learned to exploit. On 17 different worlds, enslaved species launched their own attacks against hegemony forces. The Empire found itself fighting a galaxy-wide rebellion for the first time in its history. Supreme Commander Valix realized that his fleet was trapped in a battle it could not win using conventional tactics. The humans were fighting with a desperation and creativity that made victory impossible through simple firepower advantage. Every destroyed human ship was replaced by 2 more that appeared from hidden bases. Every conquered position became the site of another ambush. Signal the retreat, Valix ordered reluctantly. We will regroup and develop new strategies for dealing with these unusual opponents. But retreating proved more difficult than advancing. Captain Jackson's fleet had positioned itself to block the main hyperspace routes. The asteroids provided perfect cover for hit-and-run attacks that prevented the hegemony fleet from organizing an orderly withdrawal. Lisa watched from the retribution as enemy ships struggled to escape the solar system. Many would not make it. Those that did would carry news back to the hegemony capital that the Empire had suffered its first major military defeat in centuries. The battle for Earth lasted 6 days. When it was over, the solar system was littered with the wreckage of alien ships. More importantly, news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy at light speed. Within weeks, revolution erupted on 43 different worlds. Lisa stood on the observation deck of the Retribution, watching Earth's blue skies clear as the last alien occupation forces evacuated the planet. She had lost everything in the first strike 4 years ago. Her family was gone. Her original world was scarred and changed forever, but she had led the second strike that proved something crucial about human nature. Humans did not just survive impossible odds. They transformed those odds into opportunities for victory. Theoine, war was not over. The hegemony still controlled most of the galaxy, and they now understood that humanity represented an existential threat to their empire. New fleets would come, larger and more dangerous than before, but Lisa Kane had given the galaxy something it had not possessed for over 1,000 years, proof that even the most overwhelming enemy could be defeated by people willing to fight for their freedom. The first strike had taken everything humans held dear. The second strike proved that sometimes losing everything was just the beginning of the greatest victory of all. As she looked out at the stars, Lisa thought about her daughter Emma. The little girl who had dreamed of being a starship captain would have been proud to see humanity refuse to surrender, refuse to accept defeat, and refuse to let others suffer the same fate that had befallen Earth. The hegemony had made one crucial mistake. They had assumed that breaking humanity's military force would break humanity's spirit. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous than any army. They had created hope. And hope, once awakened, spreads faster than any weapon and burns brighter than any star.